For the Copper Country History class at Michigan Tech, this is Group 8 with Spencer, Vincent, Maddie, and Jake. We will be diving into history through the lens of Joseph Brousseau, a first-generation son of a French Canadian, born on October 22, 1893 in Calumet, Michigan. We will focus on his origins and migration path, as well as his employment and labor, followed by his family and domestic life, and finishing up with his circumstances and community. Though Joseph was born in Calumet, immigration still shaped his early years. His parents moved from Three Rivers, Quebec to the Keweenaw in 1876, 17 years before his birth. Shown here is his father's Calumet and Hecla employment card. From this single document, we were able to confirm the family's immigration year, learn his mother Laura's name, and identify his father's birth year, 1856. This card serves as a concrete record of the Brousseau's family arrival and early life in the mining community. Economic decline and limited opportunities in rural Quebec likely contributed to their decision to leave. Poverty, inconsistent crop harvests, and the fading fur trade created a real pressure on families during the late 19th century. Calumet, meanwhile, was booming, a place shaped by rapid industrialization and constant need for labor. The mining companies operated almost like self-contained towns, building schools, bathhouses, medical clinics, and community spaces. For immigrants like the Brousseaus, it offered stability, wages, and the promise of a better life. These conditions formed the foundation of the world Joseph would grow up in. In 1917, the Brosseau family migrated once again, leaving the Copper Country for Detroit. As mining activity slowed and opportunities diminished, they recognized the region's decline and chose to move towards a place with greater economic promise. Detroit was booming with wartime industry, offering steady wages and a chance to rebuild. The move became the second major migration in the family's story, mirroring the same search for stability and opportunity that first brought them from Quebec to Calumet.
Once Joseph turned 16, he was old enough to join his peers working at C&H. He started as a coal dumper making $29 per month, or about a nickel and a dime an hour. He worked as a coal dumper for 3 years, and then one November they forced him onto the labor crew to help shovel snow off the tracks during the 1913 White Hurricane blizzard. This is where his disobedience started. He became sore and tired and was reprimanded for refusing to work. He also seemed to have caused a ruckus in Lake Linden the night before, leading him to possibly being hungover from drinking and sore from bar fighting. Because of this misbehavior, he was permanently lost from his coal dumping job and was kept on the labor crew with his brothers and father. 4 years later, in April of 1917, many of the men working for C&H were sent to the other side of Earth to fight in World War I. Joseph was not one of them. Instead, he stayed working covering jobs of drafted men. He was switching jobs every few months to make up for the declining workforce. After 6 months of covering odd jobs at C&H, he found work elsewhere as a shipbuilding laborer in Duluth, Minnesota, on the western shore of Lake Superior. This is where he most likely found out that industrial transportation sectors were paying higher wages than his mining job back home. Once World War I started to end, Joseph decided to make the move home to Calumet and reunite with his family. It's likely he talked about his experiences working in the larger city with rapid industrialization. He surely tried to convince his family to make the move to the up-and-coming city of Detroit, where the same industrialization was taking place on an even larger scale. The Motor City was growing rapidly, and jobs were paying better than the mines in Copper Country. Joseph moved to Detroit to work again as a shipbuilder laborer for 6 months before coming back to the Copper Country one last time to convince his family to move. This time, they took his word and decided to move to Detroit together, leaving behind the mining town of Calumet, where they had previously moved for the same reason of starting a new, prosperous life.
Joseph was a part of a large family. He lived with his father, George, and his mother, Laura, as well as his 3 brothers, George, Fred, and Louis, as well as his 2 sisters. This family seemed to be incredibly close as they moved as a whole familial unit from Calumet to Detroit, where they continued to work together. Before moving to Detroit, the family resided at 3924 6th Street, Calumet, Michigan, during the town's peak. This address places the Brousseau family in the heart of Calumet with easy access to the mine as well as a wide variety of entertainment and retail options. Downtown Calumet contained the Calumet Theater, which opened in 1900 and could provide live shows that Joseph likely attended after his shifts at Calumet and Hecla. There were also multiple bars, a pharmacy, a furniture store, as well as cigar shops. There was a general store where groceries and necessary items could be purchased. According to a general store credit log from 1907, to create a typical roast dinner using 3¼ pound roast at 40 cents, celery, onion, and cabbage each for 10 cents, and 3 pounds of potatoes for 25 cents, this brings the total dinner price to 95 cents. This was likely not a typical dinner that the family was eating on a daily basis, as this is a pricey meal for the time. It's incredibly likely that Joseph and his family attended St. Anne's Catholic Church, which was completed in 1901, constructed for Calumet's French-Canadian population. The construction of this church was not directly funded by Calumet and Hecla Mining Company, but the land that the church was built upon was leased by Calumet and Hecla. This shows the paternalism that the mining company worked to provide for their employees. A church can provide a sense of community, which is something that could easily be missed in the great north of the Copper Country due to the harsh weather and lack of typical comforts of the South. When not working, spending time at the bar, or at a church, it's likely that Joseph may have attended hockey games at the Calumet Coliseum, which opened on January 1st, 1914. With the inclement weather that persists throughout the long winter, Joseph would have needed to find ways to occupy his time. So he could have played recreational hockey as well. In order to get the most out of all of these locations throughout the Copper Country, it is likely that Joseph would have walked. But in instances where he desired to travel further to nearby towns such as Houghton or Lake Clendon, where it was documented that he had conducted unknown actions, he could have taken a reliable form of public transportation known as the streetcar in order to get to anywhere that he desired in the area.
Throughout the course of Joseph's life, many world events transpired, often being completely out of his control. Some of these events would have been life-altering, such as the World Wars or the Spanish flu. Some of them would have happened when he was becoming a man, like the Copper Country Strike and the Italian Hall disaster, which both only happened when he was in his late teens. Large disasters and world events were not the only thing to occur in Joseph's time, though. During his time in the Keweenaw, it experienced the highest amount of mining-related deaths, with one of the biggest contributors to that statistic being the Calumet and Hecla mine. Accidents were such a large part of the daily life in the Keweenaw that when mines started to get rid of pay for injured or unable to work miners, communities set things up called mutual aid societies, such as St. Patrick's Benevolent Society or St. Joseph's Benevolent Society. These societies helped support miners when the mines refused to pay or didn't do enough to help the miners maintain their livelihoods. In his life, he had varying access to health care. When he lived in the Keweenaw working for Calumet and Hecla, he would have likely either gone to the Calumet and Hecla Hospital or the Tamarack Hospital, with the Tamarack Hospital being built in 1901. He and many of his family members possessed goiters, or an enlarged thyroid gland, which can be the cause of many health complications, including difficulty breathing, swallowing, and many hormonal issues. Growing up, Joseph would have gone to the Calumet High School, which at the time was a bustling school with a large attendance and an even bigger tie to the Calumet and Hecla mine. Initially, a majority of the funding for the Calumet High School came from Calumet and Hecla, leaving a large amount of the curriculum to be swayed by the whims of the mining company. Nevertheless, some at the time had viewed it to be one of the best high schools in the nation. Joseph moved quite a bit in his lifetime, starting from being born and working at Calumet and Hecla in Calumet. He then moved to Duluth, where he worked in a shipyard around the time of World War I, before moving back to Calumet and finally moving to Detroit with a majority of his family. All of this moving would have made it hard for anybody to make friends, especially before the age of instant communication. One way that Joseph would have found community in this time period would have ultimately been through the church, which, during his time at Calumet, would have likely been at St. Anne's Catholic Church, a church with a large French-Canadian population that was very close in proximity to where
Joseph was not an
lived.
underground miner. His work and his presence in the Copper Country played a meaningful role in the region's development and in the profits that fueled Calumet's rise. As a second-generation immigrant, Joseph did not share the exact experiences as many foreign-born mine workers, yet his parents' migration journey undeniably shaped his life and opportunities. His employment history, ranging across multiple unskilled and semi-skilled positions, made him a jack of all trades, familiar with many corners of the mining operation. Living in the heart of Calumet, in a family home rather than a boarding house, Joseph experienced a different side of mining town life. He grew up surrounded by a tight-knit family, community institutions, and the bustle of a city at its peak. Even so, his story is woven into the larger framework of the thousands of workers who kept the copper country running. In the end, Joseph Brousseau stands as a reminder that the history of the Keweenaw was built not only by the men underground, but also by the countless everyday laborers, coal dumpers, yard workers, snow shovelers, and people searching for better opportunity, whose lives shaped the identity and legacy of this place we now call home.